Hello and welcome to another episode of the Supercoach Paige show. It's the third preseason episode, but we're missing a key ingredient in the show, Mick. Paige, she's overseas living up with a girlfriend in the US.
Yeah, well, I mean, wish we could all be over there. She's done the Swanee and gone to Vegas and all that, and so hopefully she doesn't get in as much trouble as Swanee does. But we've still got a lot of footy to cover, and starting with the Western Bulldogs versus Fremantle, there's a lot of good young players there. One being Michael Walters. He's a forward player. Pretty much last year you'd say would be his breakout year, but he's just carrying that strength over to this year. 479,500 to set you back. You got 124 as an average of the. As his last preseason game, we only played the one. That's right. So he kicked a game high 4 goals 2, and was the driving force up forward for the Freo. He'll be a very good, handy player to have, but he'd be needing to kick that kind of scoreline, you'd reckon, to sort of justify being in your team over the likes of, say, Dustin Martin, those sort of players.
Yeah, exactly right. And he's, as you say, he's a unique player and would be a major point of difference sort of player. And to have him in your side, I think it's going to be it'd be quite surprising to see a lot of people selecting him anyway. But probably overlook him, I'd say. But as you said, Mick, unless he's kicking 4 bags of 4 goals every week, you can't really justify selecting him. But the next player who had a really decent challenge series as a whole was Aaron Sandlands, and of course he's priced at a cheap 310,700, and he scored 91 in his first match and 156 in the second match, and I think he's thrown his name up in lights now, and a lot of people will be selecting him now, especially those people who may have had sort of reservations over selecting him because of his injury history. But he did monster Will Minson and Tom Campbell in the ruck by himself, smashing out 47 hit-outs along with 16 disposals, 4 marks, 5 tackles and a goal. And I think he's one that you've got to be selecting in your teams now, and you can take the risk on.
And that's huge for, a man who is huge. And he literally... He doesn't sort of miss anything, does he, that guy? If you can keep him for about 6 or 7 games, that's all you really need him for, because he's going to go up in value big time. He's going to be probably one of the most expensive ruckmen by sort of that 6-game mark. And if he can hold his body together, then boom, that you trade him away once he gets injured, and easy enough.
Exactly right.
The next one we've got from the Western Bulldogs, Jackson Macrae. Jackson Macrae collected 30 disposals, 10 marks, 5 tackles in a scintillating performance on the back of 106 Supercoach points in the match against St Kilda. That's beautiful writing there, David.
Oh, thank you. It's what was the word we had the other week?
Oh, tasty.
Tasty.
Your favourite word. Tasty.
I just thought I'd mix it up a bit.
Scintillating. I love it. Except it's hard for me to say these words, so please don't write it. He also had a disposal efficiency rating of 76%, which is huge. He's another player who's had an impressive start to 2014. The likes of Wright and etc. But can he keep that up? That's the thing. He'll set you back 331,000. So he's one of those mid-range players that he could be that risky player that just doesn't perform during the season. So he's one to consider, but he's probably not on my list, and I'm not sure if he's on your list either. Yeah,
well, I'd love to fit him into my side. Like a lot of players around his price, and especially rookies like him. He's coming into his second year in the AFL system, and I'm just worried that he might sort of taper off as the season goes on and suffer the second year blues. So I'm not going to take the risk with him, but if you do, it could pay big dividends if he does pull it off and transfer his form from the Challenge Series into the season proper. The next player that performed quite well against Freo was Kobe Stevens, and a lot of people would have selected him last season because he's quite cheap in his first year at the Dogs, and coming to his second year at the Dogs, I'm not too sure if he can keep up the average that he's showing at the moment. He scored 131 against Freo and was a tackling machine, and I think that was probably a reason why he scored so high. He had 8 tackles to go with 26 disposals and 1 goal, and had 76% disposal efficiency as well, but he's priced at that awkward price, and I think he's too much of a gamble at that price. And Jackson McRae is cheaper, actually $30,000 cheaper. And if you're going to take the risk, I'd probably go with McRae.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. Kobe Stevens was one that I was considering, but to be honest, I just didn't know enough about him, and unfortunately, that to me just says don't pick him, because. You obviously, you know who Gary Ablett is. You know who Joel Selwood is.
Proven players.
Let him prove himself this year. Same with Jackson McRae, probably. Let him prove themselves this year. And, hey, if you have to eat your hat, then so be it. Just make it a chocolate hat.
That's a good one. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to lose it here.
Yeah.
I'm operating on like 3 hours sleep.
So next game, we're moving on to Sydney versus West Coast. Heath Grundy. Now, is this guy a machine or is he a machine? I'll give you the answer. He's a machine. So he got 161. That's his average, isn't it? Over the 2 games, or was that just against
that was just against
the Eagles?
Just against the Eagles, yeah.
161 against the Eagles, and that just, I mean, where's the limit? You know, this 161. That's huge. That's incredible. I actually didn't realise he got that high. You know, it's 345,900 will set you back. He is a cheap player and he is a gun. I mean, to be honest, you can only select him as a defender. Obviously, he's a quality defender, and there is a lot of players you can choose sort of ahead of him. But this guy, he's one of those smokies, and at that price, is probably one that you can put in instead of one of the top tier players and get sort of similar numbers for. So, but I mean, there's always that risk with Grundy because he is that sort of key position. So, I mean, some games he might blitz it, but then against better opposition, he might fall behind a bit.
Yeah, he's shown in the past that he can bust out big scores, but he can't really average that sort of 100+ scores across the entire season. So, I would probably overlook him at this stage. And there's another player from Sydney, Reece Shaw. He's sort of priced around the same price from memory. So if you're going to go for one of the two, I'll probably go for Reece Shaw, even though he probably is in the same category, despite the fact that his challenge form has been quite good. But anyway, moving on to the next player for Sydney is Craig Birdie. He performed quite well against West Coast. He scored 110. He's priced at 393,500. You can select him as a forward/midfielder, and he did bust out that fairly impressive score, but he did have a disposal efficiency which was somewhat average of 65%. Finished with 32 disposals, 6 marks, 4 tackles, and 5 inside 50s, and I'd probably overlook him.
And the next one we move on to Scott Lycett, or Lycett, or Lycett. I think that's how you say it. I'm horrible with names.
Yeah, Lycett, yeah.
Lycett, okay. He's a ruck for the Eagles. 318,300, he'll set you back. And he's had 120 against the Swans. Highly talented, but... can he get in the team with Cox and Natanui, the obvious 2 superstars that are holding him back? Look, I tell you, if either of those 2 get injured, there are a few good ruckmen knocking on the door to get in there to that Eagles lineup. What happened in that game? He got 17 disposals, 24 hit-outs, 6 tackles. I mean, and 6 tackles, that's even huge for a ruckman, because normally they can't sort of reach down to those smaller guys in the midfield and tackle them. So, I mean, if he's doing stuff like that, then, you look at him as like a cruiser sort of type.
Yeah, Grundy even, yeah.
Yeah, who can run with it and play in sort of multiple positions even.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, Nick Nat... He's still got that uncertainty over him, even though he just recently did play in the challenge match, which wasn't televised, of course, against Freo. I think it was yesterday, where they won. But I'm not too sure how he went there. But Nick Nat, I know, he performed quite well, and could see some good form come his way. But if he does go down, then Lycett's probably the one that's going to benefit. Next player that performed quite well was Craig Hutchings, and he scored 116 points, and I think he performed quite well as well in the first match. He's priced at 484,800. And he's kind of compared to Matt Priddis, I think, and a lot of people are saying that he's the one that's going to take over the reins when Priddis retires. And he plays very similar to him as a tackling machine, and that was shown by the fact that he had 11 tackles on that match. So, and he also collected 24 disposals, 5 marks, and 8 clearances. So he might be one to look at 484, 800, but. Again, you've got to take the gamble, and there are other options at that price as well. So he's going to be sort of a major point of difference, and that's probably the main reason why I get him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all these sort of players, they do offer points of difference, as we're saying, because a lot of people, everyone's going to choose the Ablets, the Swans, those sort of players. But you've got to also back it up with the best rookies, the best sort of mid-price players that are going to be able to fit into your team. Craig Hutchings is definitely one of them, I guess. Moving on to Melbourne versus Geelong, and obviously this guy has a lot of people licking their lips.
Yeah, tasty, you could say, Nick.
He is very tasty, this man. Bernie Vince, 424,300 will set you back. 129 against Geelong,
massive, yeah.
Huge, and he's got a very good average as well.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a bit. He finished with an impressive 34 disposals. 17 of those contested, so very nice. 6 marks and 8 clearances.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of Supercoach coaches will have that dilemma. Do they choose him? Do they not? 424,000. Look, I am so close. I had him initially. I traded him out. I got him again. I traded him out again. He's sort of my Grimes,
yeah.
Jack Grimes. I had him, I traded him out, I had him again, I traded him back out, but I've got him back again. So I think I might actually have to get Bernie Vince back again.
Yeah, I'm the same. I selected him initially, and the coaching team merry-go-round in the off season, as you could label my side, that players have gone in and out and just gone around in circles trying to pick players. And yeah, Bernie Vince, I want to get him back in, but my team's set. I can't find a place for him, but. I think it's sort of that risk-reward type situation, and it's probably a major risk. But I think a fair few more people will be jumping on board now, and he's less of a risk seeing his form, his blistering form in the preseason. So if it pays off, then I think it's gonna reap massive rewards, and
definitely, because he could easily gain $100,000 if he keeps up these numbers. He can easily gain $100,000 over a few games. Exactly. So I mean, and that could potentially get you another premium in your team. So that could get you the Selwood or whoever it is that may have had a couple of bad games and scored less than Vince. So it's definitely one to consider. Another one to consider, Dom Tyson. At 216,800, he's a second, third year player?
He is a second year. It might be a third year player. Yeah. Came from GWS. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's picked up 29 disposals, 6 marks, 7 tackles. I guess he's sort of starting to show why Melbourne did pick him up. He's another impressive youngster with huge raps that could become a bolter this season. So definitely one to look out for. But with others like Mishi, who's obviously cheaper than him, and Pollock as well. It's a tough decision to choose Tyson in your team because he's only going as a midfielder.
Yeah.
And I know Paige always says that if she doesn't think that this player will be in the top 8 midfielders at the end of the season, then she probably won't pick him in the midfield. Yeah. And that's a fair enough point. Sometimes you got to take a risk, obviously, with the rookies and etc. But, in the midfield, you're pretty much set with the premiums, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the sort of setup you go with, I guess. And I'm one who's kind of changed my the tactics that I've gone with going into the season. Usually I'm like that. I like to select the premiums and a few proven mid-prices who I think are going to be bolters, and he's one who I think you consider as a rookie sort of player, and I've got Mishi and Pollock in my side as well. So it's kind of premiums and then it's rookies who I think are going to bolt. So Tyson is one definitely to consider.
Yeah.
And another player who on the other side of the fence for Geelong, Mitch Duncan. He's priced at 434,200. He scored a nice, respectable 118 had 24 disposals, 7 marks, and with a near flawless 91% disposal efficiency. So that's massive. And
it's only near flawless, though. It's not flawless.
Yeah, not flawless, not completely flawless like Scott Thompson the other week with 100%.
Yeah.
But he presents that option of being a massive point of difference. But only being selected as a midfielder, I think. As I always say, there's other options there.
Yeah.
And the only reason you'll be selecting him is because he's unique, but I'd probably overlook him.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, the unfortunate reality is Mitch Duncan, he's actually shaping up to be a great player, and it's crazy how Geelong can just keep churning out these guys. And I think it's about the support around them, obviously, but I mean, it's hard to justify picking him when there's so many other great players, but, you could justify it in the sense that he is cheaper and you could get similar scores as, some of the higher end midfielders. Yeah. Anyway.
Yep. And another player who I think a lot of people will be considering is Steve Johnson. Stevie J, he's priced at $625,000 and he scored 110, finished with 29 disposals, 5 clearances and 9 inside 50s, and he's an out-and-out premium and should be considered despite his lofty price tag, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Heathy Shaw from GWS, ex-Collingwood player.
Know about him? You know all about him?
I know all about him. So GWS obviously beat St Kilda. Heathy Shaw, 522,600 will set you back as a defender. He got 97. He rectified his lackluster performance last week, but still, can you trust him? He's got a pretty poor... Generally, I mean, just as a Collingwood supporter and having seen him over the years, his kicking is not great.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets the ball plenty. He runs with it, he bounces it, and he does all those sorts of things, but I just don't know. I just don't think he'll be a 120 sort of player. Yeah. Consistently. So I think there's better players you can get.
Yeah, I have question marks over the role he's going to play in the GWS side. I mean, being such a young side, he's not going to be able to have free reign like he did at Collingwood, running out of defence and running and carrying the ball and roosting along. So I think his role might change throughout the year, and he may be playing a variety of different roles with the young defence down there. But I mean, for me personally, he's always presented a risk, and he's burnt me in the past. And I must admit, I did have him in my side probably early on, but didn't last very long. That was just he was just warming a spot for another player.
Yeah.
So that was that.
You just saw him at the top of the list and just clicked on him, and then you realise, oh wait a minute, I got Heath Shaw.
Yeah,
that's sort of one of those situations. I'm sure a lot of people are in that situation as well. So we're not saying necessarily trade him, because again, he is becoming that point of difference, because I guess not a lot of people are choosing him anymore because he is playing for GWS. He's one of those players that you could choose someone better, but who knows? He could be better than those better players.
Yeah, exactly right. And one player that caught our eye, and I think a lot of people were sort of keeping an eye out for him in this match, was Josh Kelly. Played his first senior game for GWS, and you can select him as a midfielder, of course. He's priced at $212,300, and he's one of the high-end priced rookies coming into this season. And he scored a respectable 90 and collected 23 disposals, and 10 of which came in contested situations, which you always want, especially from rookies of his calibre. And he looked quite composed in his first outing for the Giants, and I think he would surely get a look at some senior action in 2014. So I think he's definitely one to consider. And personally, for me, I think he's one of the ones in the running for the Rising Star. So look out for him.
Oh, that's a big call.
He's a big call.
He's a tasty player.
He is a very tasty player.
And looking at sort of Dom Tyson's price at $216,000, it's sort of you could potentially come down to choosing one of those two. And Josh Kelly, I mean, I've heard he's a contested disposal machine as well. So probably, definitely someone to look out for.
Yeah. He did tear it up as well in the under-18s and TAC Cup with his Supercoach score. So, he's got the proven record behind him, and if you can sort of carry that through to senior footy, which would probably be a big ask in his first year, but big raps on him, and number 2 draft pick. Yeah, definitely one to consider.
Well, he'd want to live up to his expectations, a la like Jack Watts, obviously. is doing. He's a very, very good player, Jack Watts. Anyway, Jimmy Webster is the next one, defender. 240,800 will set you back. Now, this is one that has been written about recently on the website, so go and check out that article. He got a score of 90 against GWS. You can get him from St Kilda, obviously. He picked up 21 disposals, 7 marks. He presents himself as another cheapish option down back, but again, 240,000. It's that awkward price, that sort of price between sort of maybe that 220 to sort of 440 sort of range, where you just sort of go, well, is it really worth it getting this player when I could probably get a rookie for about 117,000 even? That could probably get me the same scores. Yeah. So. Yeah, so it's one to consider, but I know you're a fan of him, though, aren't you, Damon?
Yeah, I am, and I actually had no idea who he was coming into this season. Yeah, I must admit, but you know,
he's just got one of those names, hasn't he? Jimmy Webster.
Jimmy Webster.
You reckon he'd be the kind of guy you call up to come and tile your roof or something? You know?
Yeah, Jimmy.
Not to be playing
like Jim's mowing.
Yeah,
Jimmy, call Jimmy. You'll come around and bloody do your tiling and mow your lawns. But yeah, he's
he probably still will. Actually, he's playing for St Kilda, so I mean, that's just a bit low, wasn't it? A bit of a low blow.
No, but yeah, he has thrown his name up in lights in this challenge series, and he is presenting himself as a potentially tasty option. But at 240,800, you want someone with a bit of a proven record and history behind them, showing that they can average a decent score. And I think I don't know what is he averaging? Just a quick look down the sheet. He's averaging 91.5 across the series, and you'd want to see him do that consistently at senior level, and he of course didn't do that last season, but at that price, that's too much of a risk, I think. But
yeah.
If you want to take the risk and it pays off, as we say, you pay massive dividends.
Yep, exactly. That's what this game is all about.
Yep.
Luke Dunstan is our last one for the games that we haven't covered in the programs. Midfielder, 132,300. High raps on this kid. He is going to be a good player. He only got 63 against GWS. Finished with 22 disposals, 15 of those contested. So that's pretty big. 7 clearances and 1 goal. Now for a first year player, that's huge, and you can tell that he is going to be that type of player, that he is going to be able to go in there straight away and have some sort of impact, whether it be a huge one or just sort of around the 60 to 65 mark. Who knows? Again, another one to gamble with. Yep,
I think at that price, a lot of people will be having him as a bench option, and even potentially as one of the last on-field midfield spots. And he's got a sort of a massive tank. He's got a mature body for his age, and he's going to see a lot of senior action. I actually think he's going to be playing majority of the season for the Saints, and especially with Stephen out for the most of the first part of the season, Montagna out for round 1 through suspension, and Hayes as well. He's going to be selected in round 1 for sure, and you'd be silly not to select him, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Well, you just called me silly, so thanks for that.
No, your name's Cameron Wood, wasn't it? Not silly.
Cameron Wood is my name, not silly.
And the next segment, which we're going to be going through, kind of goes hand in hand with the articles that we are publishing on the Supercoach Paige website. And we are looking at the top 10 players that perform the best or caught the eye in the Challenge Series. And kick it off from the top. Who we've got at the very top there with the average?
Well, the number one man for the preseason games, Matthew Wright from Adelaide. Forward midfielder, you can get him as, so I'm sure most people have him in their forward line. 159 he got in the first game, 113 in the second game for an average of 136, and that is humongous. And I know I heard this at last season, a lot of people got disappointed by him. So whether you decide to take the risk and whether he can actually follow through on this good form that he's showing the preseason is something that's up to you. But I got to say, I do have him in my team. I have him on my forward line.
There you got him.
I do have him, and I know it's a risk, but you got to take plenty of risk in this game, and that's one of them that I'm taking.
Yeah, I think it's one a lot of people will take, based on his form, and the same thing happened last season, the first part of last season, and he was performing quite well, and then Sanderson sort of changed his roll up and sort of ruined his momentum that he had with his Supercoach scores that he was getting. And I think, he'd be one to take a gamble on, especially up forward. There aren't as many options, especially at his price, and I think he might turn out to be a reliable selection. So definitely one to consider. And Tom Liberatore is another one I think a lot of people should be sort of considering. He's scored 156, a massive 156 in his first game, and then sort of a not too bad score of 85 in the second challenge match for an average of 120.5. And I think with the Dogs' young midfield, and we saw last season, especially towards the latter half, Tom Liberatore came into his own and sort of owned the space in the Dogs midfield, and he's got the mature body now, mature head, of course, he didn't have in the past.
Yeah, he does have a big mature head on his shoulders. So. And a lot of people are actually, I've read in an article in the Herald Sun, I think it was, that they're saying that he could potentially be the next Gazza.
Yeah.
So there's big raps on this guy. Yeah. So no pressure, buddy.
Yeah, no pressure at all. But
good luck.
Yeah,
that's all we have to say.
I think he is priced awkwardly, but great point of difference. He's got the history behind him. He's got the average that he had last season that was quite respectable, and definitely take a gamble on him, I think.
Yep, another guy you take a gamble on is Aaron Sandland. It's not even really a gamble.
Nah.
Spoke about him before. Average of 123.5 of the two games. Not much more you can say about this guy. Just get him in your team and have him for at least the first 6 or 7 games, because his body will probably start to break down then, and then trade him out and get yourself a better ruckman.
Yeah,
that's all you need to say really about him, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. And as you say, fully expect his body to break down. He hasn't played a full season for yonkers. You could say for yonkers.
63 years.
Yeah, 63 years. I think for the past 4 years at least, he hasn't played a full season. If he plays, I'm expecting to play up until sort of the midway point of the season. If he does that, that's a massive tick, and at that point there, when the buys start to come into action, you can sort of look to trade him out and use him as an on-field cash cow, I think. So
yeah, definitely.
A lot of people are going to be selecting him based on his challenge scores, and same goes with Bernie Vince. Scored 115 and 129 for an average of 122. So the third biggest average of the top 10 players that we're running through across the challenge series. And he's a mature body, mature head in the Melbourne side now, along with Daniel Cross, who they got there. And, of course, he's going to be playing all 22 games bar injury.
And with Roos at the helm, it's maybe something you consider, a lot of Melbourne players even, because Roos has obviously got a good record with his coaching, and I think he's
recycled players, especially.
Yeah, and I think he's probably got a good side to work with in Melbourne. So next one we'll move on to is Andreas Everett, or some people call him Ondrej.
I have no idea why his parents spelt his name that way. But it must be frustrating for him. I just imagine him at school, like they were like, "Hey, Ondrej."
It'd even be Andrej.
Andrej. Yeah.
Andrej. Anyway, Andrej is a defender, and he got a average of 101.5, and that's quite good for Carlton, because they are a horrible team.
Fantastic side. Mark Murphy just signed a 4-year deal. Must mention that.
Not Supercoach relevant. Actually, he's a very good one to have in your Supercoach team as well. Quite cheap, but Andreas Everett. Definitely one to consider in the back line. Probably a few players ahead of him, but again, all these points of difference is what at the end of the season, the number one team, whoever that may be, will have all these different players who have just performed out of their skin, and it's a game of chance. And I guess you got to take those chances on players like Andreas Everett. Yeah,
you got to have those mix of players who are risky, but you got to find the better players that are going to sort of be diamonds in the rough, and I think he might be one of them. But as a Carlton supporter, I don't know his roles. I know his roles will change. He's not going to be playing just in defence or just up forward. He's going to be like Lockie Henderson. But if he can perform the same as Lockie Henderson, then I think his selection will be justified. But moving on to the next player, Dusty Martin. You can select him as a forward mid. like sort of the Richmond side in the first game, didn't perform too well, had 64 against the D's and then backed it up with a respectable 119 and played a different role. He was roaming up forward, down back, through the midfield, and I had him last year from round one, and he sort of was kind of like a roller coaster ride, I guess you could say. Can bust out massive scores to half time and then go missing. That's my only query over him. But if you can sort of rectify that sort of part of his game that he needs to improve, then he'll be a very good premium selection, I think.
I definitely agree. Another guy who's on the verge of top premium is Cyril Rioli. Select him as a forward midfielder as well, and he could actually potentially be an alternative to Dusty Martin. He got 103 in his first game, 90 in his second game for an average of around about 96.5 or 97. We haven't actually written it down, but poor effort from us. But again, the only issue I have with Cyril, and I would definitely choose Cyril in my team, but the only issue that I have is that I've chosen too many Hawthorn players already, and it gets to a point where you say, all right, how many can you choose? If you're going to get Mitchell, if you're going to get Suckling, if you're going to get Birchall, who's the midfielder that we were talking about, who is similar price to Daisy?
Liam
Shields. So there's a few Hawks players that you can definitely choose in there. There will be very good value and get a lot of points. Cyril is one of them. Leave it up to you.
Yeah, he did play a different role across the Challenge Series. He was used down back, which was quite a strange position for him to be playing in. And they did ask him on, I think it was a footy show last night, or it might have been something else, might have been mistaken. I'm only operating on 3 hours sleep, so do excuse me. But
hey, it's Monday. What are you talking about? The footy show wasn't on last night.
Don't do this to me, I will believe you. I'll start talking about chocolate hats. I want you to work in the analogy of the chocolate hat again. That was fantastic. But I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here.
Quite tasty, that chocolate hat.
Yeah, just like Cyril, but we won't go into that area. But yeah, I think he was asked if he was going to be playing a different role this season, and he said probably not. But if he does need to play down there, then he will, of course. But I think he'll go back to his regular position, playing through the middle and then up forward in parts. But next player who had a pretty decent challenge series playing in the ruck was Paddy Ryder. He scored 139 in the first match and then had 75 in the second for an average of 107. I think with Bellchambers out, he's going to be playing a majority of the time in the ruck, which is going to help his scores. And, if Bellchambers was there, he'd be playing more up forward, and that would limit the amount of scoring output he would have. But I think based upon that, I don't know when Bellchambers is supposed to be back. Is it supposed to be 2 months or something at least?
Yeah, at least
something like that.
At least 2 months. So yeah, Paddy Ryder's definitely one to consider because when he has proven that when he has most of the ruck work by himself or with little assistance, he definitely does shine. And
I had Paddy last season, and I made the mistake of getting him in just after he hit his peak, and I thought, oh yeah, here we go, he's gonna average massive scores, and I was rubbing into Paige because he was at a decent price, and I paid top dollar for him. And then, of course, in the weeks to follow, Bellchambers came back to the side and his scores just went downhill, and just like the rest of my side. And Paige gave me a massive ribbon for that.
Right.
Won't forget that.
But the next one we spoke about before, Sam Mitchell. He's a defender mid, and there's nothing more you can say about this guy. Lock him in, get him in the team.
Got to get him in.
Move along. We've spoken about him so much already. Just get him in your team. What are you doing? Stop wasting time. Stop listening to this. Go and book him in right
now. Book him in. Stop eating chocolate hats.
Jesus. Get off the chocolate hats. Get him in your team.
I can't remember how you use that. You said, I'll eat my hat or something and just make sure it's chocolate.
Yeah, well, you got to take risks in life and in Supercoach life, and if you have a risk that pays off, then that's good. And if you don't, then if you don't get someone and he does do very well, then you'll happily eat your hat as long as it's a chocolate hat.
Yeah, but. Okay. I don't know why you'd be walking around outside with a chocolate hat.
I don't know why you liked it so much. To be honest,
that was good.
I mean, you got to walk around in winter with a chocolate hat on, obviously, because you can't walk around in summer, else it'll melt all over your head.
It reminds me of the Simpsons episode where he's Homer's head in the Halloween episode, and his head is changed into a donut by Ned Flanders playing the part of the devil. Anyway, yeah. I'm picturing the scene of him sitting at the table just picking at his own head. So just there walking around outside with a chocolate hat. Anyway, we're going off a massive tangent. Well, this is what happens.
Very Supercoach relevant.
And the last player who we're looking at in the top 10 list, this is kind of like David Letterman. In the top 10, Jimmy Webster, as we spoke about before, can select him as a defender. He's priced awkwardly, as we did say. He averaged 91.5 across the Challenge Series with scores of 93 and 90. He's a risk at that price. He hasn't got any proven sort of record behind him, which you want. So, massive point of difference. That's really the only reason you'd get him. But
you get him also because you mow your lawns and tile your roofs as well. So Jesus. That's you forgot about that point, game on. But anyway, that's a wrap for us. We've gone well over time again.
I think it's more to do with that chocolate hat. I don't know what's going on with us this morning.
And the donut head. Anyway, there's your combination of the highest averaging and most impressive players of the NAB Challenge. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with Paige on the Supercoach Paige show, and that'll be after the first round of the season. So the entire first round, the second week, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the second week she's coming back. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we might do another podcast in between now and then. But until next time, see you later.
Yep. Catch you then, and enjoy your chocolate hats.
Yes.